Good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, June 12th, 2023. This is a meeting of the Policy Committee, and I'm going to begin with a call to order. I believe we have everybody ready to go. We have 3 members of the board with us currently, and we should have a 4th joining us shortly, either by phone or by Zoom. I have 2 Mr. Needlemans, which is great. All right, so we're going to begin. We have several policies for update. As you know, this spring, we were able to complete the roughly 18-month process of reviewing all policies in the 100 through 900 level. And so now what we'll be bringing to you approximately 3 times a year will be updates from the Pennsylvania network that provides updates on legal changes that are significant for board policies. So the Pennsylvania School Boards Association regularly releases what they call the PNN update. And that update provides school districts an opportunity to review any changes to the law that would impact board policies. So we have several policies to review with you this morning. We're going to start with policies related to 137, which is home education programs, and then 3 accompanying policies, point 1, point 2, and point 3. All of these policies, as an overview, deal with the access of students for whom home education is their current program, being able to participate partially or in whole with programs that we offer at the district. And so you're going to see here extracurricular activities, co-curricular and academic courses, and career and technical education. So I'm going to turn things over to Dr. Johnston. She has done a very thorough review of all 4 policies. We've also had our solicitors review as well. Dr. Johnston, they're all yours.
Morning, everyone. I'm happy to be back with you to speak about policy. Home education, as you know, formerly known as homeschooling, is a right guaranteed in Pennsylvania for families who elect to have their child educated at home. PSBA has released updates on 4 of these policies, the first of which is the general policies and procedures governing home education. The policy itself had some clarification around the core policy 137 itself on home education. The primary changes is just clarifying the approval and supervision of the home education policy. There are no recommended changes from our part based on what PSBA has already recommended. So for 137, we have no recommended changes from the recommendations we received from PSBA. Are there any questions around home education 137 that I can try and answer? Okay. Assuming that we are fine with that, I want to move us on to where it starts to get a little more interesting. 137.1 focuses on allowing home education students to participate in extracurricular activities. And so we've reviewed this internally and along with our additional solicitor from Fox who works with us on education and special education matters just to make sure that we hadn't missed anything. And so what this allows is for a home education student to participate in any extracurricular activities that are hosted by the school. We will not provide transportation, the same as now. The families are responsible to transport their child back and forth. The exception to that exists when there is competition or an activity. So if there is a soccer game at an away location, the student, because as a member of the team, can participate in that district transportation, but they are not able to be transported back and forth for practices or events happening at the district. Does that make sense?
Stephen, can I just clarify that? So
Sure.
Basically, you're not providing a bus from their home to the school.
That is correct.
If they're at school, they can be driven on a bus to the game, correct?
Yes, Amy, that's right.
Okay.
Thank you for checking. I was trying to make that clear because it's a very fine, it's different, but it's the same. But yes, what you said. Additionally, just like our athletes are required to demonstrate eligibility based on their grades and attendance to school, additional information will have to be gathered around how the students are doing in their home education program in order to be eligible to participate. So they still fall under any participation requirements we have for academic performance. Again, we're recommending that we this summer work to build an AR to articulate how we will gather that information and what it will look like, but that exceeds what's necessary in the board policy, but really our oversight of that policy and implementation plan. Additionally, we are recommending that the student needs to register as they would if they were attending our on-ground school. And you're going to notice the theme, this is going to keep coming up. One of the great concerns we had was if we don't, home education students are not required to provide us with the same information that students who attend our public school buildings are required. Immunizations, health records, updates, emergency contacts. We don't have any of that information naturally about our home education students. We don't need it. However, if the student is participating in our extracurricular activities or entering our school, which is a theme in the next few policies, we feel obligated to have basic information to make sure they're immunized, that we have those immunization records, health records, any allergies or health care needs on record. So the students who participate, who request to participate in any of these on-ground in-school activity with our students will need to demonstrate residency, much like a student who's attending our buildings full-time. And that is a variation. Again, as we talked about before, I am recommending, along with Dr. Yannicone, that we then build an AR that articulates how to do this. And I know Dr. Lutz looks forward to helping me to do that. Are there any questions on extracurricular activities?
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment in regards to the AR. It's good to see that there will be an AR to address all those issues as students come into the school. It's wonderful that we're welcoming. They are part of us. They are part of our school. We would love for them to participate in the extracurricular activities. So I think that's important for just the development of the child. But regardless of that, we still need to have that AR developed to make sure that we have everything covered for the students entering and being with all the other students that are there. So thank you for being thoughtful in that AR.
Thanks, Mrs. Green.
Ms. Green, if I can, and I'll just to piggyback off of that, you can see in this list here, this is the list of draft policies that we review. So what happens now and has been happening for the last 18 months is that any revisions or recommended revisions from the Pennsylvania School Boards Association are loaded into board docs for us. So when a PNN update comes to us in a summary document, we also are aware that those same policies and ARs are included in our board docs. So we'll begin with the draft AR that was provided to us by PSBA. We'll review it to see the extent to which it fits with our current processes and procedures. And then finally, where necessary, we'll have our solicitor review as well. And so ARs do not require board approval, but ARs must be in line with the policy that the board approves. And so it's our anticipation that any policy that we revise, including these four, by the end of the summer, we will have an AR in place for the start of the new school year.
Thank you, Dr. Yannicone.
Absolutely.
And one of the things, ARs are always really important, but particularly in situations like this, when they are likely to be rarely used, administrators at the building level won't necessarily develop sort of working efficient systems around this. So it's really important that we memorialize sort of the steps and process so that we're consistent across all 4 schools and so that families know what to anticipate, even if there's a change in administration or new people coming on board, that it's unfamiliar territory, but that we have a process and procedure that we as at the district office are able to implement district-wide. The second one, any questions on extracurriculars? So that's what happens outside of the school day, before or after. Good? Okay. Then it gets, they like to keep me honest. So then PDE allows new changes to 137 that allows for 137.2, in which home education students have the opportunity to participate in up to 25% or a quarter of the academic school day within our public schools. meaning that they could, if they are at the elementary level, they would participate in one core. We're interpreting that as one core course: language arts, math, social studies, or science. Those are the three cores that we're talking about, or a special area. So they're going to come in for the special areas every day: PE, art, library, STEM at the elementary level, music. So elementary, we would identify it as one core course. For middle school and high school, it's one block of core instruction. So that's about 82 minutes, give or take, at each of the buildings for each of those subject areas. In high school, they alternate often an A-B day. So it could be, they could attend one block on an A day and one block on a B day, which may be 2 half-credit courses. Not to get too far into the weeds, but we wanted to identify that so that there was, again, consistency, and that families who were making these decisions knew upfront with clarity what we were, the way in which we were interpreting these regulations. Again, same as I said before, with extracurricular activities, we would require students to fully be registered with the district so that we had a full understanding of their educational and health care needs. In the event that while they were at school, something were to happen or there was an emergency, we would have a full list of emergency contacts. This doesn't put our nurse in an uncomfortable situation of not knowing a piece of information that would be critical in the event of an unexpected emergency. Questions, comments, reactions on that one?
Oh, Dr. Johnson, can I just ask the measurement of 25%? It makes perfect sense. I'm just wondering how or whether there is any consistency across districts with respect to that measurement. In other words, is it going to be something that gets contested later on, or does everybody kind of sign on to this, or how does that work?
I can't answer. We have not had any countywide discussion about it. It hasn't come up. That doesn't mean I couldn't check into it, which I could in the event it comes up. I think for us, it was unique at the secondary level because we're on a block system in which the day is broken into 4 equal parts. It made it relatively easy to make a determination about that. For us at the elementary level, a student's day is like even English language arts is a little bit more than 25%. But once the student was already there for language arts, even though the numbers of hours might be a little higher than maybe in math or in social studies, I thought it was artificial to say, oh, you can only come in for exactly 25%. Does that make, I didn't want to sort of get into the weeds.
No, it makes perfect sense. I was just wondering how.
So that's how we decided.
Okay, cool.
I'm sure I could talk to my colleagues in other districts about how they were interpreting it, but if they are not on a block schedule, it's not as clear for them.
Oh, yeah.
But the 4 blocks made it relative. I actually felt like I cheated. I was like, oh, 4 blocks, a quarter of that is 1.
No, listen, easy is better, right?
I suspect that that's where the AR will be really important, is building this out. And like anything else, after we do this for a year, we may find that we hadn't thought of this or hadn't thought of that as they surface as issues. And we may be back this time next year recommending some revisions.
Okay, so thank you very much. I was just curious.
Sure. Dr. Yannicka, is there anything else we talked about in advance of this meeting that we wanted to bring up?
No, I think you've explained, essentially what we've tried to do is say, what's the closest to 25% that makes the most educational sense for students? And that's basically where we went, right?
I did neglect to indicate that also allows students, which is a major change from the Pennsylvania Department of Education, to come into school and participate in that 25% can be special education and related services, where we would craft an agreement with a family where we would not be providing FAPE, a free appropriate public education, but instead we would allow a student to participate in up to 25% of the day. It's the same 25%. And receive their special education supports and services in an agreement that we would craft with the family. Again, as will be articulated in our AR in concert with council.
And I think the only other thing that I might highlight is, as this is a new policy, we know that we'll be adjusting to whatever specific requests families of home education students make over the next few months and few years. If at any point we feel like we need to modify the policy or bring a revision forward, we'll be happy to do so.
Any other questions? Okay, and 137.3, which is the last of the four I wanted to bring forward to you today, or needed to bring forward today, is one that actually we've already been implementing along with our Montgomery County Eastern Regions superintendents and school districts, where students who have received this home education program have been eligible to participate in career and technical education programs as provided at Eastern. And so that has already been underway. Prior to the clarification, we just thought it was in good conscience. And so we have been doing so. And so the same process where the students will need to register, that is a change where they will need to register, and we will be working with the school counselors to make sure that we're equitably allowing access to the programs of choice in the same way that we do with other students into those Eastern programs. Again, that's what will be articulated in our AR, and the other change is having students register. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
Dr. Johnson, I just want to also point out, we had a choice at the bottom under delegation of responsibility, and we have maintained the district's right over the technical school's right to make selections with regard to students and to manage. The district will take care of the grades. So in other words, we don't want to have Eastern be responsible for those pieces, just as we are responsible ourselves as the district. We're going to continue to do that. So that student will be factored in with every other student who applies to Eastern each year as a Springfield Township student, and we will take care of the report card and providing that to the home education supervisor.
That concludes the sort of bundle of home education policies that are being recommended. Is there any final questions on this section of the agenda? Thanks, everyone.
So what we'd like to do is bring these four policies forward on June 20th for a first reading. And then the second reading would be either August 8th or August 22nd, but they would be well in advance at the start of the school year, so that any family of a home education student would be eligible to take advantage of these revisions with the coming school year. Are there any questions or concerns about that? Right, terrific. So we'll bring it forward on the 20th. And then our second section is on the 800 levels. Now, these policies were just approved in February and in April, because as you know, these were the last policies we reviewed, but there were some substantive recommended changes. And so we'd like to bring these two policies forward for a first reading next Tuesday as well. I'll bring up the 800 policy first, into the drafts here for you. So the 800 records management policy really had just a few changes. First of all, we had to designate who is going to be responsible to coordinate records. And much of what you see here in pink is because we already reviewed this policy this winter, and we took out large sections with PSBA and solicitor recommendation. So there's a lot of draft language that you're going to see out of this. But under the records management plan, we did identify that we will create an AR, and that is part of our summer process. As we did last summer, all of the bulk policies that were reviewed in 21, 22, we created ARs that following summer. This summer, it's our intention, any policy that was revised and approved this calendar or this school year, we'll do our ARs this summer. So you'll see here that there's a requirement that we have a records management plan in green. And that's really it. We feel like we're already in a good, solid position. This policy was reviewed again by our solicitor, by PSBA, as well as by Dr. Lutz and Ms. Kerr. And I don't know if either of you want to speak to anything in regards to the policy right now that you think is relevant. So it's fairly straightforward. Essentially, we just have to have a plan for how we're going to do this. It's not much, but PSBA wants to change, so we're going to make it. Okay, so this policy will come forward. Any questions or concerns? And the last policy which certainly is an important topic, and there are some substantive changes. The interesting thing about this is this is one of the last policies we approved in April. And then within weeks, they came out with a substantive change in the policy draft. And so you'll see here, in many cases, if the revisions are minor and you've recently made changes, you can do one reading. I'm going to suggest 2 readings for this, both on June 20th and then again in August, because there are some substantive changes. Everything in bold is a change from our policy that we approved in April. And essentially what you'll see here as you review it is there is significant weight given to making sure that any information about students in particular or staff that in any way is breached, that we notify those persons, that we notify the Attorney General's office, that we make sure that we do everything we can to manage that breach. So this policy was reviewed by Ms. Kerr, by Dr. Lutz, and by Mr. Oliver, and by our solicitor, because I do think this is a substantive set of changes to a policy that we just approved. Dr. Lutz, do you want to speak just briefly about, how we manage that information?
Sure. So we collect a significant amount of information about both students and their parents through our registration portal. Everything from confidential medical information to parents are asked to upload pictures of their driver's license. So we have a lot of personal identifiable information. So if there were to be a breach, the registration software would obviously notify us of that breach. We would then in turn have to turn around and make sure that members of the public, that parents, students are all notified that their information could potentially be out there as part of that breach. And so we just want to make sure that we know what we're collecting. It's important information for us, for students, so that we're identifying the right guardians to pick up children and making sure that people live here in our district in order to receive school services, but just making sure that we turn around if anything should happen.
Thank you, Dr. Lutz. We also requested of our solicitor confirmation with regard to vendors. So this also includes any of our vendors. And one of the things that we would make sure we had in the AR is that vendors would have a specific timeline for notifying us of any breach that they had that would impact the security of any information regarding our students, our staff, our taxpayers, for example. Ms. Kerr, is there anything else you wanted to share with regard to this and staff? Or she may, she may have stepped out for just a moment. I apologize. She was. Are you okay? Ms. Kerr?
Sorry, I had to step out.
No, I remember. I apologize. My question was, is there anything else with regard to staff considerations that you want to make sure the board is aware of as they're considering this policy?
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. And Mr. Oliver, I know you reviewed this as well. Is there anything with regard to technology that you wanted to make sure we had in mind?
Just reviewing the policy and the NIST standards, trying to align some of those, I think working with the legal counsel and understanding our responsibilities internally to data that we house, as well as our vendors, and that our vendors are meeting that same level of security or representation when it comes to our data, notifying people, encrypting it, and backing it up. So it is very comprehensive. It's huge. So
thank you. Yeah, these are some pretty substantive changes that they made right around the time we were revising the policy. So I apologize. If we had known it was coming, we would have certainly waited on the initial review. But this is important, obviously. And then we do have on the board agenda, so we're prepared to bring all these two 800 level policies, 800 and 830. We're prepared to bring forward to you. There's also 830.1, which is related, has far fewer implications for us, but essentially asks us to identify who is responsible. And we've identified the Director of Information Technology as the person who is responsible. And then also noted that the Director of Technology will conduct regular vulnerability and risk assessments. We do that now. Mr. Oliver's team regularly does this and does a great job. It's just highlighting who is ultimately responsible. We all know that ultimately I'm responsible, but this identifies the delegation of responsibility. So it's the Director of Technology here. There's also a request that we identify whether we have personal electronic devices and resources, and that we have to make a note there. And that's essentially all that was relevant with regard to changes. Mr. Oliver, is there anything you want to speak to with regard to 830.1?
No, I think everything is included, and setting those parameters in time to check them and stay on top of them is important because it's ever constantly changing. So
Thank you. So I did ask our solicitor to do a review of this particular policy, and you'll see if I go back to the agenda, give me just a moment. So you'll see in our agenda that 830.1 is a new policy. And so as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, I'm awaiting a review by our solicitor. PSBA has already made these recommendations. So I'm going to say that until the end of the week, this will be tentative. I may hold this until August. If our solicitor is able to provide us guidance this week, then I'll be happy to move it forward, as there very little, it's a new policy, but there's very little that we needed to do in order to implement the policy, as you saw in green there. So if I can put it on the agenda for the 20th, I will for a first reading. Otherwise, we'll just hold until August 8th or 22nd. I don't think from a timeline standpoint, this in any way places the board in a difficult position. Good morning, Sarah. I know you've been listening. So it's nice to see you. Are there any questions about the 800 level policies? 800, 830, or 830.1? Okay. So those are all the policies we have for you. This is a little bit of a shorter meeting than you're used to. I know we try to time for no more than an hour, so I feel really good about today's timeline. What we will do is in the early fall, we'll be happy to, and I think I can stop share at this point. In the early fall, we'll be able to bring any policies that come forward over the summer. So that'll be our intention. And if there's anything that's more timely than that, I won't hesitate to let you know. But otherwise, now that we've gone through the full policy review and we're in the process of finalizing ARs, I feel like we're in a very strong position as a district. And if we need additional policy meetings, we'll be happy to call them. But probably a fall, a winter, and a spring will be what we'll do moving forward for this committee. Do you have any questions or concerns about that?
Sounds fine.
All right, well, I appreciate all of your help with this. Ms. Hughley, thank you for doing the presentation. Next Tuesday, we'll make sure you get the minutes. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.